Well, hello to our little lovely group. We're quite a small group tonight, aren't we? We do have the lovely Jack Pransky back for a second time, the first book club author to have had a second appearance, I think.
Huh.
I think that's right, isn't it? So, and you were the first. I think you were the first author as well, weren't you, Jack, on our
I think
group?
so.
So yeah. So thank you for coming back, and thank you for writing another book. I don't know if anyone has anything they would like to kick off with for Jack at all.
Maybe it'd be helpful if we could ask you, Jack, just to give a bit of an intro to people. I know that one or two of the people who I've just started working with very recently, I said that they were very welcome to join the book club, but I actually gave them Somebody Should Have Told Us to read rather than Seduced by Consciousness, because it just seemed to me that it was a more accessible kind of way in, maybe, to the three principles. And so I'd just be interested to kind of hear you say something about what moved you to write this second book, and how your thinking has moved on since the first one.
Well, first of all, hi everybody. I actually still give or recommend Somebody Should Have Told Us for people who are getting into this for the first time. And I just started to see things a lot deeper, because really I wrote the first draft of Somebody Should Have Told Us about 13 years ago. That's a long time ago. And, in that time, one would hope that we see things deeper. And I did. So I just, I just had it in me, and it had to get out. I don't know what else to say about it.
And it's interesting that you say that, although you now see it deeper, which obviously then this book came from that you still prefer to give people Somebody Should Have Told Us as an
introduction.
Introduction. Can you say a bit about where that is?
Yeah, not with people who have been involved with the principles for a while.
Mm-hmm.
Then I would recommend Seduced by Consciousness to them.
Mm-hmm.
So what did you, I'm sorry, what did you ask about about that?
Well, I was just going to say that's just that is kind of a different approach from what Garrett Kramer was saying to us last time. That he kind of goes right in for that. I now see it more deeply, and so I just want to really show everybody that go straight to the depth of what I see. And we kind of did sort of question and say, but sure, haven't you got to meet people where they are a bit more, because they must just think you're talking nonsense half the time. And he was immovable on that subject. So I'd just be interested to hear what you've got to say about that.
Well, actually, since I wrote the book, my thinking has crystallized even more. And I started to see the three principles in a very, very simple way. Really, it comes down to two things to me, which I did specify in the book, but not this directly. What the three principles are all about, to me, is creation of illusion and essence and oneness. And everything can be boiled down to those two things. So when you look in those directions, they are simplicity itself, and yet there's no limit to the depth of understanding them. So if you want, we can talk more about those two directions that I see.
I would love to hear more about that, Jack. Yeah.
All right. The first thing is what does creation of illusion mean? First of all, why is it creation? What is creation about it? Well, the way that I see it is that whatever we're feeling would not exist if we didn't come up with the thought. And I personally don't care where the thought comes from. I don't care if we generate it ourselves or if it comes to us from the spirit world, or where it comes from. Doesn't matter to me, because once we have a feeling of it, we've got to own it as ours. That's why I say it's our creation, no matter how it gets there. In a sense, we are creating the feeling that we get to live with from moment to moment. And our creative gift is the power of thought. That's how we create things. So we would be having no experience but for our own creation. That's very humbling to me. If you stop and think about the kinds of things that you get into in life that bring you down, make you angry, get you worried, get you bothered, it's like all of that is our very own creation. Very humbling. Why is it illusion? Because people can have the exact same thing happening to them in their life, and they'll be all over the map. Some people will see it at a very low level of consciousness. Some people will see it at a high level of consciousness, and there's all these levels in between. So what we are creating is the illusion of what is. And it's the illusion of what is that makes us feel everything. And what we call reality. And that's what our life becomes. What we call reality, that we have essentially made up, is what our life becomes. What questions do you have about that, everybody? Yes.
Go ahead, Helen. Do you want to unmute yourself? Yeah.
Stick my hand up. My life's gone to shit recently. And
I'm sorry to hear
that's a
that.
technical term.
Yes.
And I haven't even got around to reading the book that we are about to discuss. But in my defense, I do have this one sitting here. So I have read what you've written, Jack. I have been finding it really difficult to incorporate the three principles understanding that I thought I had in relation to other people in my life who seem a million miles away from it. And I seem to find great difficulty in single-handedly owning where my life's coming from when it seems so entangled with someone else. And there's a lot of blame and resentment and misunderstanding. Can you say anything helpful around owning one's own life regardless of what else is going on?
Well, you said a very interesting thing in there. You talked about something like seeing the three principles or applying the three principles. Or
I understand them intellectually, and I have had real insights with them and real changes of how I've been able to live. So I kind of get them on that level. And then the human life comes in, and sometimes it just seems like I can't make them meet my human experience. And I mean, I know the three principles simply explains one's human experience. So I'm probably disappearing up my own, which is another technical term. but yes, it's trying to, I've got myself completely lost in trying to apply what I think I've understood to real life in relation to other people.
Okay. So this is what's interesting about the way you're putting it. To me, there's no applying. There's just, and you said it yourself, there's just a description of what is. So you are taking in those people through the three principles, and they're coming to you. Like it looks like they are making you feel a certain way.
Absolutely, yeah.
Making you feel like shit or something, as you put it.
Yeah.
It looks like that, but really, see, this is where it gets to creation of illusion, because what you are experiencing of them, which is what causes you to feel the way that you do about them, you are making up. And it's very humbling to realize this. So it has nothing to do with whether anybody else understands the three principles or not.
Right. Yeah.
You know,
That's something I often find myself thinking, if they also understood a little bit of where I'm trying to operate, and I find it difficult to sort of, yeah.
That would be called wishful thinking.
Yes. Good at that.
Wishing that somebody else understood the principles so they would make it easier on you.
Yes. Yeah.
But one of the most humbling things to me about the principles is that it's never the outside world. It certainly looks like it's the outside world sometimes. It definitely feels like it's the outside world. It tastes like it even. It sounds like it. You know, it's almost like we can touch it. That's all of our five senses coming into play because consciousness is using our senses to give us the experience of, in this case, that person or those people. Everything is coming into play. All of our sensory system. And so the experience we're getting of them, we would swear is true. And we would swear this must be an exception to the three principles. But there are no exceptions whatsoever.
Yes.
So if you wanted to, you could talk more specifically about what that person or those people are doing and what you are experiencing of them, but that's up to you.
Right now, I think it's quite a symmetrical situation of blame and resentment and historical crap, and it's quite symmetrical. And I think that to improve it would need to sort of have a symmetrical, I suppose maybe that's the key. I think to improve it would require a symmetrical level of effort or shift, but actually that's probably completely wrong because my experience is only in there.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is. You know, in a sense, it doesn't matter what they do.
Yeah.
I mean, because we are making up our reality of it.
Mm.
That's why it would be helpful to know, like, what a specific behavior might be that they're, just so the rest of the people on the call can relate to it.
Yeah, just sort of, to say specific, I would just say general blame and years of bad communication.
Okay, so you're getting blamed for something?
I feel I'm getting blamed for something.
Okay. So when you're getting blamed for something, what does that feel like for you?
Unjust.
Okay. So you're kind of like me. I have this justice thing.
Ah, all right.
When something is unjust, I really get triggered. But one of the things that we're making up, inadvertently, of course, is the importance of justice.
Yes.
And of course, it seems on the surface justice is very important. But is it so important that we will bring our lives down?
Gosh.
As a result of a thought of injustice? Because without really knowing it, we have something in the back of our mind that we've created that says justice is really, really important here.
Yes.
And then we look at what's happening out there in the world and we say, this is not justice. This is unjust. Therefore, so we compare the two. We compare what we've made up about justice and we compare where things are at. And there's a big gap.
Yes.
And we are experiencing the gap with our own thinking. The gap is in our head because we've created the importance of justice. We've created what's not just.
Yeah.
And when I say we've created what's not just, it's just behavior.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just blame. Yeah. It's just blaming behavior.
Yes.
So we take the blaming behavior and we say unjust. And we get the feeling of unjust. And if justice is really important to us, unjust hurts.
That's spot on.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's our creation and it's our illusion.
Yes.
Because it's just behavior. See, this is the important thing for everybody. It's just behavior happening in the outside world. It's blaming behavior in this case.
Yeah.
Now, what that has to do with us is a good question. People can blame you all you want, and it's like their problem. That's if we created, and I'm not talking about going out of our way to create this. I'm saying if we happen to create, that's their problem. In our minds, we are not going to get the feeling of being brought down by the blame or by the injustice.
Mm-hmm.
If we happen to say, well, they must live in a horrible place themselves, in order to be blaming me all the time. And then we have a feeling of compassion.
Yeah.
A little bit anyway, that we've made up again. So all of these are equal possibilities within the levels of consciousness. And we're using our incredible gift of creation. We're just coming up with one and calling it what it is. It ends up at a certain level. We get the feeling of it and we get to live with it.
Yes. So really just being aware that it's all made up.
What's made up? The behavior is not made up. Okay?
Yeah.
What's made up? We've made up the importance of justice. We've made up that blame is unjust.
Mm.
Therefore, we get the feeling, oh, I don't know how you would describe that feeling. How do you describe the feeling in you of unjust?
Tension, stress, upset.
Okay. Okay. So that is what we've made up based upon all of that other stuff.
Mm.
It really is very humbling.
Mm.
I mean, I get amazed all the time with how I get caught.
Yeah.
As soon as I think that something is real out there in the world, I get caught. As soon as I forget that it's the three principles in action, that it's an inside job, that it's my own creation of illusion, I get caught.
Mm.
So at that moment that I get caught, I forget all about the three principles. But then as soon as I remember, and then by remembering, it just occurs to me, like there's something in the back of my mind that is making me remember how it really works. And I may get caught for a while, but then I'm going to see it.
Yeah.
So I don't worry too much about getting caught in the moment. It's just something, it's almost like the human condition. It's just going to happen. But the way I see it now is I'll see it eventually.
Yes. Yeah.
Hopefully I'll catch it sooner next time. So I won't have to live. I won't have to live with that feeling.
Yeah.
Much, but if I don't, so what?
I appreciate that, Jack. Thank you.
You're welcome, Helen.
Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Can I just kind of add something on there? Because I think what I noticed, Jack, in what you were saying was the sort of, because what Helen said at the beginning was something about trying to apply the three principles, wasn't it, Helen? And there was something very different in what you said there about, at some point something will just occur to me. Sounds very different from, I'm not getting this, I need to apply the three principles.
Yes, there is no applying. Really. It's just, I've said many times, and I said it in the book, three principles are not a prescription. They're a description. They're just a description of how things work within us, moment to moment. And that's all it is. And the more deeply we see that, the more we deeply understand it, the more we're free. We're free from our own creations, from our own illusions.
But I really think I really can relate to this idea of
Ali, we can't hear you very well.
Okay, sorry. Can you hear me better now?
Bit better.
A little bit. You have to yell.
Okay, I'll be as loud as I can. I also have a big thing about the need for justice, and I can see how that translates into so many. I think it's actually best if everyone else mutes, maybe. Oh yeah, everyone is okay. And I can see that we all do completely make up what we think is right, wrong, just, unjust, and then as a result we suffer. And so that makes sense to me, and I can live my life in that way a lot of the time now. But when I see people who are dying of diseases, people who are, I don't know, the kids in cages stuff, I know that's a big thing, and my sense of unjustness, it just kind of, it floods away from, in those moments, this understanding.
Yeah, but here's the interesting thing. Okay, so here in the United States of America, we are undergoing a well, what I see is a human rights crisis, because we have a president who either is totally oblivious to what happens when kids are removed from their parents and they don't know where they are and they don't know if they're ever going to see them again, and the trauma that that causes with their thinking. I don't know if he's just oblivious to it or whether he doesn't care, but something is going on there. So to me, that hooks right into my injustice thing, right? Now, very interesting though. Suppose I get bummed out by it, or really angry about it, or depressed about it, or worried about it. How is that going to make the situation better? You know, instead of making the situation better, now I bring myself down as well. Now, I just heard that volunteers are needed to interview these kids to try to like find a way to track down their parents and reunite them. Now, if I really care about changing the situation, I could volunteer to do that. But that doesn't have anything to do with the feeling that I live in about the situation. Like, that's not helpful. If I'm depressed about it or angry about it or worried about it or bothered about it, that's nothing is helping. If I do something constructive, that may help a tiny bit.
Mm.
But this is really important because we end up getting angry or depressed a lot about things going on in the outside world, especially if we have a justice thing. Does that make sense to you, Allie?
Yeah, that it really makes sense, and I can see I can feel that I used to get very, very stressed about things in the news, and then I decided, this is years ago now, to stop watching the news because I got stressed about it. You know, that was my that was my kind of position a few years ago, and
Can I just jump in for a second on that one?
yeah,
Because that's very common.
yeah,
All right, so we take this outside thing in the outside world, the news, okay? And we say, it is making me feel bad.
yeah. So I'm going to stop watching it, then I don't feel bad anymore.
Yes, forgetting that it's our use of the three principles that is making us feel bad from watching the news.
Yeah, exactly, and I can see that the pendulum for me swung that way, and then it had to kind of find its way back to the middle somehow. But I think it makes sense to me that we will take the action that we're going to take from a place of calm as much, if not more so, than we will from a place of anger or fear. But it sometimes feels like we need to not like what's happening in order to do something. That I need to be unhappy about the fact the kids are being taken from their parents in order to feel like I would want to do something about that.
Is that true, though?
I don't know.
What if wisdom just, this is where we get into the essence and oneness part of the equation.
Mm.
You know, we've just been talking about the creation of illusion part. But wouldn't wisdom be our guide?
Yeah. I mean, the more that I see that the more I see the oneness, the more I see that we are one being, the more it wouldn't make any sense to do anything to hurt another person, and it wouldn't make sense to allow that to be happening. But it wouldn't make sense to do that from a place of anger. So I can sort of glimpse it. Does that make any sense?
Yes, but what I'm trying to say is that we don't need anger to motivate us to do something.
No, it just really looks like that, doesn't it?
It does look like that. Wisdom would motivate us.
Yeah.
The only trouble with anger is it brings us down.
Yeah.
And I'm not taught, I don't see anything wrong with anger in a moment.
Mm-hmm.
But when we live with it, and then over time it starts eating away at us, that's not healthy. For our own well-being, it's not healthy. Whereas allowing wisdom to speak and to be motivated by that, that's healthy.
And that's a really good distinction for people, I think, especially who are new to this, because it can look like spiritual bypassing, people have called it. It can look like
spiritual bypass. I love that. I've never heard that before.
I've heard loads of people say that to me. It can look like we're trying to, just kind of say it's all okay. It's all just happening as it should. We're making it up. There's nothing to do here. It can look like that. And I suppose, wisdom would dictate. I mean, I really hope that wisdom would dictate, but it's not doing that with Trump right now, is it? But hey.
Well, I mean, we can't do anything about his wisdom.
No.
We can only do something about ours. And the only thing we can do about it is allow it to come through.
Yeah.
Or not, That's the option we have. It's always speaking to us because it's part of our essence of who we are. And when we've created the illusion that doesn't allow us to hear it, that's the only reason we're not hearing it.
Yeah.
It's always blabbing away. It's just very soft. And the rest of our thinking is very loud.
I think maybe Richard, did you have something to kind of add to this thread? Go ahead.
Sorry, it's really almost the same point, and I'm not sure I'm moving the debate on much. But so I got to a stage a few months ago where I got fed up with social media and Facebook. So I decided to sort of have a break. But then I was thinking that there are, campaigns on Facebook where like sort of collective outrage and anger has had positive effects, because there was the kids that wanted to do something after the Florida, I think it's Parkland shooting.
Right.
They started a campaign, and their anger galvanized people. So it's maybe I'm making the same point, but it seems like, a collective anger and outrage can motivate people to make change in the world.
Well, I suppose it can, but like I marched at Parkland and I did not do it out of anger. Well, let's put it this way. I was not living in anger when I was marching in Parkland. And it was an incredible experience. The people there seemed like they were just standing up for something as opposed to being angry at something. I mean, if they were just angry at something, nothing would happen. But those kids who may have been initially like spurred on by anger, if they just stayed in anger, nothing would happen. But if they allowed wisdom to speak, okay, what can we do? And then they take the reins and they have made something amazing happen. I was so impressed. I really was. The wisdom of these young people, absolutely incredible. And that's what ends up creating change. It's not that the anger ends up creating change. It's whether wisdom is able to speak when people are actually, or if people are motivated by anger. There's something that takes over from the anger at some point if constructive change is going to happen.
Can I say something there? Because I just sort of realised something as you were both speaking there, that I've heard that so many times from so many different people, that it really looks like we need to feel a bad feeling to be motivated. So I've had, a girl who's anorexic and, ultra stressed about school and work and everything, saying, well, if you're not stressed, then you can't be motivated, as if that's just truth. And then just today, somebody was saying to me, I've just realized that the reason that I kind of keep myself in this really frustrated, angry state about my job, because that's then a really good reason why I can leave. And, it's that sort of, I need to feel bad, and I was just pointing out, well, you could just leave because it feels like the wrong job for you. But it's, no, I have to be really cross and angry towards my boss, and I have to be really dissatisfied with this, and I just suddenly sort of went click, 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 and I just sort of thought, oh my God, that's what we're all doing. Yes. We're all kind of, we feel a feeling, and then we kind of hang on to it because we think that's what we need to make us take action. And exactly. and it isn't.
No, it's not. And really, I mean, this is why I come back to creation of illusion all the time now. Because we're the ones who are making up, I need to be angry in order to get out of my job. Yeah, if you make that up, then you need to be angry to get out of your job. But when we realize that that's just creation of illusion. It's a different reality to see, wait a minute, I could just leave because it doesn't feel right for me anymore. It's like, what does anger have to do with it?
It is a very widespread misunderstanding, isn't it?
It is.
It's that, it's because we have a feeling that we do something rather than because it occurs to us it's a good idea.
Yeah, right. And it would be so much easier for people if we just allowed things to occur to us because it seems like a good idea.
Yeah.
It just feels it's sort of sitting around thinking, oh, it might, this feels like a good idea. Feels a bit sort of airy-fairy, and I sort of feel that you need stronger feelings in order to. So if you're doing a job that you don't like, maybe, and then you thought, oh well, I'm just making up these reactions, and actually, I can be perfectly happy even in this job. Then you might not want to move on. Whereas if you're really dissatisfied, because I was dissatisfied in a job and I changed my career and I didn't look back, and I don't think I was angry about it, but I was very unhappy in the job that I was doing. And so that feeling of unhappiness, unless I misconstrued it, that's what felt to me caused the change. It wasn't anger, but I would dissatisfaction.
I would say that it's not the unhappiness that caused the change. The feeling of unhappiness may have been an initial motivator, but if you really look at it, I mean, it seems like at some point you had to ask yourself, is this the best place for me to be? And it's that question that comes out of wisdom that is the motivator. Because otherwise we would just continue to be unhappy in a job. The motivator is, wait a minute, is this what's best for my life right now? What do I need to see about maybe doing something better suited for me? That's the kind of thinking that goes by in our minds and we don't notice it, but we notice the unhappy. You know what I mean? It's easier to notice the unhappy or the anger. It's not as easy to notice the, oh, wait a minute, is this where I need to be right now?
Yeah.
I see a hand go up over there. Terry, can you unmute yourself? Or
I worked in a career for 30 years.
oh,
and,
what? So, a career?
I worked in a career for 30 years
Mm-hmm.
and never felt a sense of necessarily like angry or motivated to get out for any certain reason. And then the year before I retired, I just kind of got moved by something else that I'd rather be doing. There wasn't any sense of, I got to get out of here, that motivated the move into something else. It was
Mm-hmm.
a natural, it was like breathing, right? You're just kind of like, okay, I'm going along doing this. And now it feels like I want to be doing that.
Yeah.
And there wasn't that any sense of anguish or anger or, motivation from something negative that caused it.
It's wonderful when it happens that way. You know,
I tried the other way, but it never worked for me.
Yeah. Getting back to the book, every one of these things we get seduced by. You know, it's like whatever we think, consciousness picks it up, brings it to a certain level, and we get to live the feeling of that level. And the reason we get seduced is because it employs all of our senses for the purpose of tricking us. That's what's going on. We're just being tricked constantly because we get seduced into believing that the feelings are real instead of being created by our own gift. Well, that was either a conversation stopper or does anybody else have anything to ask or to comment on?
Yeah, so in your book, which I love, by the way, the sort of second half of the book, it seems to me mainly devoted to your moving away from your wife and starting a relationship with this other woman. Was the sort of message of that you were seduced, by the thought that a different partner would be the answer? Is that what you're saying?
Well, yeah, I was seduced by everything right down the line. And the beautiful thing is that we can only do our best at the time, given the way that we see things. And I can look back at all that and think, oh my God, I just can't believe that I got so tricked along the way. But I did. And I just got seduced in so many ways by it all. Do you have a more specific question about it, or?
Well, no, I mean, I think that I found it sort of quite painful in a way, because it was so raw and so honest in your descriptions. And I
think how I felt.
But also, it's slightly sort of depressing from a point of view of a sort of three principles novice like myself. If someone who's immersed themselves in this wisdom all their life, or whatever, not all your life, but someone who's very embedded in this can be blown off track so easily.
Well, that's what George Pransky was worried about. He didn't want me to write it because of that very idea that people new to the principles will say, well, if Jack Pransky, who supposedly knows something about the principles, can get thrown off track like that, then maybe the three principles are not worthwhile. Well, I think it's a perfect description of how any one of us can get thrown off track when we forget that the three principles are in operation. See, that's what it is. I forgot. And I have a tendency to forget in relationships. Like, that's my blind spot. So, now, and this kind of got revealed to me that it was my blind spot when I was writing about it. I wasn't even aware that it was my blind spot before I was writing about it. I would just get into difficulties in relationships, but I had no idea that it was a blind spot. So when I was writing it, it got revealed. And now, I still get caught, but I'm much more aware that, okay, this is a blind spot. I'm going to get caught. And because I know that now, where's that coming from? I don't go down the rabbit hole as far as I used to. And when I say I used to, it wasn't that long ago. So the more we are aware in any moment, there's two things going on. There's having the understanding of the three principles in the back of your mind to show us, yes, this is the way that it really works. And then there's seeing it in the moment. So we can forget at any moment, which I do in terms of my blind spots about relationships. So I forget. And then, but because there's that thing in the back of my mind, I'll remember again, eventually, as I was talking about before. And that's good enough for me. I mean, I don't know where anybody got the idea that we need to live in a state of bliss all the time. I don't know anybody that does. But people who really deeply understand the three principles will dip into that downness, you could say. But then, it's like, oh, wait a minute. I forgot something here. I forgot about how it really works. And then as soon as we see it, we come back up. So I would just say that people who really see the three principles in action are down less of the time. but not all the time. You know, Sid Banks wasn't up all the time. We are human beings. Jesus wasn't up all the time. Just reading a book right now, which is an incredible book called Resurrecting Jesus. And he was not up all the time. And what's good enough for him and Sid Banks is good enough for me.
Does anyone else have anything they want to ask? 'Cause I've got something I could ask you, Jack, but I want to make sure that everybody's had a chance to say what they want to say. Francis, go ahead. Oh, you need to unmute yourself. I didn't seem to work at this end.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, there you are.
Right. I suppose you speak about the understand the being humbling, that word that this is being created. What I find is the self-blame. It's probably the old Catholic Irish guilt of I'm creating this, I'm doing this to myself, and I find it very hard to lose that way of looking at it.
Well, you know, that's a different thought than we're creating it. Like, we're creating it is one thought. And then, oh my God, I feel terrible about having created it, is another thought entirely. It's not the first thought that brings us down.
Okay, so it's the follow-up.
Yes, it's the second thought that brings us down. And it's a habit, you know, because people who have grown up in that kind of situation have kind of taken on the guilt about it. And it's not, that part is not necessary. That's what we get seduced by. You know, if we have, oh, I feel bad about having created it, thought, we get seduced by that, and we feel bad about having created it. But if we didn't have that thought, or didn't take it seriously, we might have the thought. You know, if it's a real big habit, you'll have the thought. But then when it gets there, we might get caught in it for a little while. But wait a minute, do I really have to be there? See, this is what I'm beginning to learn more and more, is that the more we are able to call our own reality into question, the better off we're going to be. Is this really true? Is it really true that I have to be guilty, feel guilty about creating, about my own creations? Is that really true? And then we begin to look in that direction, we begin to question it, and we find out that it really isn't true after all. Is that helpful, Francis?
Yeah, I mean, there's no doing in this, obviously, and we don't deliberately, I suppose, do we, pause, or you're in the midst of this, it's all these other thoughts that are, making it worse.
Yeah, I mean, if I keep being caught by something, like the same thing comes up over and over again, I might say to myself, and I actually did, I actually did in terms of being, having a blind spot about relationships. I said, okay, universal mind, I would like to see what I need to see about this so that I can see through it. And little by little, things are getting revealed to me. Because if I say I would like to see it, but then kind of take it off my mind, so I'm not ruminating about it, I'm not trying to see it, I've just set my intention to see it. And I'm allowing universal mind or my wisdom within me that's connected to it to speak to me when it's ready to. But I've set my intention. So I've set up the circumstances to be more aware of it coming to the surface. And I have to be patient and wait. And I notice that if I try too hard to see it, it's going to take longer.
Yeah. Yeah. I think
if I get impatient, it's going to take longer.
Patience is yeah. I see that. Patience and being open.
Yes.
To
exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Jack, I know Richard's got his hand up. Are you on a deadline or have you got a few more minutes?
I've got a few more minutes.
Great. Richard, go ahead.
So I was just going to add on that sort of feeling of guilt. I can relate to that. And, if I do habitual things that I'm not proud of, afterwards I feel guilty. But with Francis' point, I suppose it's the same sort of illusion that we were talking on earlier about anger motivating. I'm under the illusion that the guilt, it acts as a deterrent, but it doesn't seem to. So whatever habit it is, the guilt doesn't actually seem to improve the situation. So, but I'm sort of under. It's a very persistent feeling that just as you have to be dissatisfied in order to change something, you have to feel guilty in order to change your behavior.
Yeah, that's an ingrained thought that we get seduced by again, and it really makes it look like we have to be. But I hate to bring him up again, but Donald Trump really believed that taking children away from their parents would be a deterrent to more people coming in illegally into the United States. Well, it's not, because people, if they get desperate enough, they're going to do it anyway, and people don't usually think they're going to get caught. So these things that we think are deterrents really aren't deterrents. And there is the only thing that's a deterrent ever is, does people's thinking change? If people's thinking changes, they are deterred from doing things that they would have done otherwise. If it doesn't change, they're going to keep doing it, or they're going to try to slide around it somehow, or they're going to think they're not going to get caught and do it anyway, or because they're going to keep going after it somehow, because nothing about their thinking has changed.
I wondered, Jack, if I could just ask you that you mentioned earlier these two things that are what you see really clearly now, and the second one, the essence and oneness. You kind of touched on that earlier, but I would just love to hear you say a little bit about what you see there. Yeah,
well, first thing I want to say is that everything we've said about wisdom comes from that place. When we want wisdom to be our guide, it comes from, it's part of our spiritual essence within us that we bring with us into the world. And so I'm basically, I've come down to lately thinking it basically comes down to peace, love, and wisdom. That's part of our essence. It's something that we have but don't think we have because we're always trying to seek it. But it's part of us, and it's connected to the oneness of all things. So we are just a teensy little piece, and that's even not a good word, because it's more like a drop in the ocean, where we are the same. There are no good words. We are the same stuff that is the energy behind life. And when we are able to look in that direction, then all the illusions that we've created stop looking like they hold any water. So the more we are, like in the world of essence and oneness, creation of illusion doesn't even matter. In the world of the formless, the form doesn't matter. And so the more we are able to look in that direction, the more at ease we're going to be with life, and the more peace, love, and wisdom we're going to drop into naturally. It's like falling back to the place that we already are. And we're never separated from it. But because of the illusions we create that we get seduced by, it makes it look like we're separate from it. But that's just the illusion. We're not separate from it. And so there's so much richness in that direction in life. And we have equal opportunity at any moment to either look to the darkness or look to the light. It's like at every moment we're at a fork in the road. We could be looking to the light. To me, that's very comforting, to know that that's always there for us. And somebody the other day asked me, what did I mean by looking toward the light? This woman has a history of getting right up to the brink of being successful. And then something happens where it doesn't happen. And she kind of sabotages herself with thought that she sees as real, that prevents her from making that leap to success, you could say. So she was the one I was talking with this about. And she told me about how she had gone to Dick and Bettinger's event that happened in the UK. And while she was there, she kind of hooked up with a couple of other people who got really excited about wanting to take the three principles out into nature and create an experience for people where they would be out in nature and learn about the three principles at the same time. They all got really, really excited about it. And they started planning together about it. And all of a sudden, this woman got right to the brink, and she started having thoughts like, they're much better at this than she is. She's not adequate about doing this and doing this, and so all this kind of thinking kind of crept in. And so what's looking to the light? See, that's looking to the darkness, you could say. What's looking to the light? What's looking to the light is the original enthusiasm that she had about developing this in the first place. Like, that's exciting. It's exhilarating. It gives you like this natural inclination to want to make it happen. And it would. Just being motivated by that. It's looking to the light. And it's only those other thoughts that creep in. Like I was talking, in a similar way to what I was talking about with Francis about. It's like we get this innocent thought, and then we get taken down by, in that case, thoughts of guilt, and in this case, thoughts of self-sabotage. But that's all it is. That's the only thing getting in the way of the light. Only thing getting in the way of being motivated by peace, love, and wisdom. That's it.
Thank you, Jack. That was it's beautiful to hear you talk about that.
Thank you.
So I guess we better wrap up there. Thank you so much for your time, Jack, and thank you everybody for joining us on this call. And it's just been such a pleasure. I'm sorry that we haven't spent time going into detail around your book, but
it was detail around the book. That's what the book is about.
Yeah. That's kind of what we always do. We talk about what all the books are about rather than the specifics of what's on page 24, which always seems much better.
Yeah.
So thank you very, very much. And I think our next call is on July the 25th. And Ali, who are we speaking to? Or do we not? Oh, I can't hear you. You've gone completely mute.
So annoying. Hold on. Can you hear me now?
Yes, just.
It's Phil Goddard and Musings on Love.
Right. Phil Goddard.
I'll sort my laptop out for next time.
Yes. Phil Goddard, Musings on Love. So.
Love is a wonderful subject.
Absolutely. Thank you again, Jack. It's been a real pleasure to have you with us.
My pleasure. Thank you, everybody, for being here.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.